Good afternoon, everyone, for Tuesday, February 2nd. I'm at least coming to you from the State House after a couple of committees. Going to tell you kind of a little bit about my day and then let my colleagues amplify anything or talk about a few things coming up. We just finished a meeting of the K-12 Education Budget Committee. Couple items of news. First of all, some of you, we've been telling you for the last several days about an informational hearing tomorrow, not on a bill, but collecting information about hybrid and remote learning. It's still a little unclear how many oral conferees there will be. Not very many, we don't think. We believe some people from KSTE are speaking, but apparently there's already 80 pieces of testimony submitted, written. We hope that represents our school boards, probably others involved as well. That's all going to be discussed tomorrow. We're warned to expect a late night, but remember, there's not yet any bill. We'd also told you that a new hearing was going to be a hearing on a new bill, a broader kind of private school aid bill on establishing what are called education savings accounts. House Bill 2119 was to be on Thursday. That's been pushed back till Monday. And the chair has announced there will be a limit to the number of oral conferees. So by some method, we'll figure out who the lucky 7 are, but there's no limit on written testimony. So you have a little more time to do that. You have till Thursday afternoon. But again, those of you concerned about private school funding, how that relates to public schools, vouchers, tax credits, all those things, here's another bill. We provided information. If you want to register your opinion, you need to get signed up to do that in the right form by contacting the committee assistant of the House K-12 Budget Committee by 3:30 Thursday. Thursday afternoon will not be this hearing, but they will be working on a number of other items. We've been told to expect a couple of late nights. Today, they held a hearing on the budgets of the School for the Blind and School for the Deaf. This begins their budget making process. And they passed out House Bill 2067. This is a bill that KASB opposed, although, as we've said, it's a little hard to get a strong feeling on what it actually does. There's a current law, which we hope you are all following, that requires school boards to have an annual building by building needs assessment every year to sort of determine needs and use that to set your budget. This bill further directs that the board is to use that process to improve student achievement and allocate the budget to achieve state education goals. Now, the bill does not actually say how the money is to be used. There's no penalty, there's no enforcement. On the surface, we think this mostly just codifies what boards are already doing, maybe informally, but we opposed it because it is often tied to this idea that all districts should be spending at least 65% of money on instruction, sometimes called in the classroom, which we think has a lot of problems given the fact that almost no board could do it under current operations. There's no evidence that spending money on instruction as a higher percentage affects achievement, but nonetheless, this always comes up. So again, the bill, we don't believe really does everything on its surface, but can be a way of drawing criticism in an area that we don't think is valid. Welcome you to look at our testimony on our website if you want more information before this goes to the floor. Finally, would note, I was here for a meeting of the Senate Education Committee. They had a hearing on a bill, Senate Bill 63, I believe. Again, pretty innocuous bill that would allow private school, non-accredited private school homeschoolers to participate in the state's free ACT program, which is already part of our state contract. But they then began working on their version of the private school tax credit expansion, which is Senate Bill 61 on the Senate side. Started working amendments, defeated a couple. They're going to come back and work more on it tomorrow. So at this point, this is another bill KASB is opposed. We suspect there will be a lot of amendments offered. We don't know whether any will go on. The sense is there's probably the votes on the committee to bring it out in some fashion. May consider some amendments that might, from our perspective, improve it, but we don't know yet. So, guys, I had a long afternoon. I'm probably dragging a little bit. What am I missing? What are you hearing as we look ahead? I know, Leah, you've got a hearing tomorrow, so kind of tell us what else we expect the next few days this week.
Yes, tomorrow we will be testifying in the House Education Committee. That's a different committee. It's not K-12 education budget, but House Education. It's chaired by Representative Steve Hubert. We'll be testifying against a well-intentioned bill that requires all Kansas students to pass a 100-question civics test in order to receive their high school diploma. Now, we are opposing it not because we oppose civic education, but because, as we point out in our testimony, the state board's redesign effort around, the Kansas Can School redesign effort emphasizes civic education and civic engagement. Our schools are focusing on that more as we move away from sort of, just standardized testing and seat time for measuring results. And we are also going to note that students in Kansas are already required to pass U.S. history and U.S. government courses that include content on the U.S. Constitution in order to graduate from high school. So our testimony is going to say we certainly agree that civic education is important and we all need to be good citizens, but just requiring an additional test isn't really going to accomplish that goal. So that is tomorrow at 1:30 in House Education. Scott, anything else?
Well, am I muted?
No, you're good.
Okay, I'm good. I'm sorry. I'll just bring up a couple of things I'm going to be looking at next week. Actually, the Kansas State Board of Education next week is going to consider guidance for schools to re-engage with students and families and staff in dealing with COVID-19. This is going to be called Navigating Next. It's a framework similar to the navigation document that was issued earlier, or I guess late last year. And so it's going to include recommendations also on using federal relief funding for schools. So this is something that the state board will take up Tuesday and Wednesday. And I think I was listening to the K-12 committee, and I think the chair said she was also going to start working the House version of that Senate bill that deals with tax credits tomorrow and Thursday. So both.
Very likely I don't know whether they get to it tomorrow, but that's probably a part of what they will be working on Thursday.
Right. And that's House Bill 2068 for those of you who are following along at home. So both of those committees need to hear from you in the next couple of days.
Scott, noting that issue around federal COVID dollars, that's certainly something that the K-12 committee has been is looking at, part of what they got a briefing on today. I will continue to say, as we have over and over and over again, you need to be talking to your legislators if they're on that committee, or if they're not, or sharing with that committee. I believe that the interest of the committee is saying we're getting a lot of federal money, and how are we spending it? And if you're getting that, well, does that take care of other needs you have? So it's critical to be explaining what you've received, how you used it, what needs you had, what needs you have that may be unmet. I think our understanding is those federal dollars do not relieve ongoing costs. So at best, they help deal with costs you didn't expect to have. That's not extra money to meet your ongoing needs. So those are that, again, explaining what you're doing is going to be critical for the legislature to find out. Maybe a little bit related to that before we wrap up. Every session, it seems like we have to learn something new. I'm afraid we may have to learn more about unemployment fraud, which maybe many of you are dealing with. A bill was introduced this week that's going to have a hearing Thursday that, as I understand it, has been introduced by Representative Sean Tarwater, who's on the K-12 Education Committee. He's also chair of the House Commerce Committee, to try to protect employers from basically getting dinged by the unemployment system because of fraudulent claims. So I think it's a positive bill. We're trying to collect information on that. But if your district, as we assume virtually all districts, have had issues with unemployment claims and you have concerns, let us know. We're also working with United School Administrators and legislators to try to hold schools harmless if we can. So Don't claim to know much more than what I just said, but we are hearing a lot of concerns around that. Certainly legislators are as well. So we don't want to prolong this. Guys, I will say we'll have to make a call sometime tomorrow if we want to wait till everything wraps up to do this, or give some kind of interim report, because again, we're expecting a lot of testimony tomorrow and a lot of discussion on Thursday, and probably continuing next week. So as long as the K-12 Budget Committee is active, there's nothing that makes them have to stop. They can kind of keep going. That's one of the advantages or disadvantages of the 330 committee. So anything else before we sign off, my friends? Okay, as always, if you have any questions,